What's up, guys? Sub-Zeric here. Look, I was going to do a VOD review today, but Mort put out this incredibly long and detailed tweet about patch 14.10, and everyone is talking about it, so I felt like I had to do a video about this. I also like doing these kind of videos. They're just fun because I get to talk, say my piece, you guys get to talk in the comments and say what you guys think about the entire thing, so it's just fun. And also, we got a patch coming out tomorrow, so do I really want to VOD review the like this patch where it's about to change? I don't really care for it. So if you guys didn't see the tweet, it basically boils down to 14.10. The patch notes came out actually a few minutes ago, but the like pre-release where Mort goes through all the changes came out, I believe, yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. And people realized that this faded Riot comp, the strongest comp in the meta, was basically not nerfed at all. In fact, it was actually buffed because Rek'Sai received buff, Ahri received a big buff, Yasuo was like kind of neutral, but basically they really hard buffed the early game for the strongest comp of the game and didn't nerf the comp at all. And so when something like that happens, a lot of people have questions, understandably. They say, how could this like possibly happen? This is the strongest comp and you're buffing it? Like, do the devs not understand that the comp is strong? Are they like out of touch? Do they not know what the meta looks like because they don't play the game? And no, that's not the case. And Mort actually explained in this tweet sort of what happens, and he's talked about this before, and in other responses to tweet, he's talked about this as well, where when Riot is working on a patch for TFT, they don't just say, the patch is coming out on Wednesday. They don't just say, okay, Tuesday, we're going to get all the changes in, look at the meta, and then it's out Wednesday, all good. Because obviously a patch takes time. They changed Syndra this patch. They took away the part where she throws the unit. That takes time to program. You have to take out the piece of code, I guess, that makes her throw the unit and then make sure that she's not bugging out based on that. Obviously, they have to, playtest if they're going to change some augment in some way, make sure that, there's no issue there, if they're going to change some trait in some way. And even just changing numbers takes time because they have to localize it, if they're changing, like they changed, what was it? The augment that gives you a random emblem branching out, they changed it to give you 0 turns before that item, comes out. I don't know if they've changed the text this patch, but eventually that text will just say you get the emblem. It won't say it takes 0 turns because obviously that sounds weird. And so these things take time in a game like TFT that's as big, as global as it is. And so Mort has said it takes 8 days before the patch comes out. That's when the patch actually has to be done, which is a lot of time. And you think about a comp like this faded Riot comp that really didn't pop off right at the start of the patch, right? This is a comp that about a week into the patch, and that week area is really dangerous because once a week is passed up, they need 8 days. So they've already said, okay, we'll ship these changes to the patch. And then a comp like this pops up. That's really, really scary because then they can't really make changes outside of a BPatch. And so then comes the second part where Mort says, okay, so we basically have 2 options because we need to BPatch here because we know that Faded is going to be broken when this patch comes out. So there's basically 2 options. We can do an immediate BPatch when the patch comes out, or we can wait about a day, which they did with last patch. They waited about a day, and then they BPatched. And so you would say, okay, well, why don't we just do the immediate BPatch? If you know that it's broken, then just do the immediate BPatch. The problem with that is, then they can't BPatch after that because of the way Riot's patching cadence works, just sort of like a limitation with the fact that TFT is in the League client. And this is what this all boils down to, is that TFT isn't a game with its own client. TFT exists in the League of Legends client, and that means that we have to patch when League patches. So, if a week into a patch we want to make a change, we can't do that. We got to wait every 2 weeks to patch, unless we want to do the B patch, which has added limitations. And so we end up in this situation where we have a patch that's going to come out tomorrow, and probably the best thing for them to do, and this is what Mort said they're going to do, is wait about a day, like they did with the last patch, and then B-patch. Once they have a little bit of extra information, they'll try to get a really good B-patch in, and then hopefully the patch will be balanced for the rest of the entire patch. Also, we're watching Setsuko, by the way, if you can't tell by the way he's zooming in and probably like singing to Taylor Swift right now. And I think that's the best way to go about it with the current limitations they have. And with that, I want to say something here, and maybe people will be annoyed by this idea, but I would say that that's completely fine. That's good, and I think some people, when they see a B patch, they say, well, this set, there's been 4 patches so far, and 3 of them have been B patches. That means 3 of the patches have been failures, and I think that's just a weird way to think about a game when we're in this situation, like I'm talking about, where you have to BPatch because we're sort of like working from behind on a lot of these issues. I think you shouldn't see a BPatch as a failure of Riot because these are the limitations they're working with, and and then that's just sort of like in the psychology of it, how you should think about it. But even in practice, what's the issue with having a BPatch? Do you guys remember how last patch worked? Last patch, we had a patch that came out. There was some stuff that was really out of line. They BPatched it about a day after that patch came out, and I think last patch was fantastic. I think there's a huge variety of comps that are able to be played. You can play around Ashe carry, you can play around Kai'Sa carry, you can play Lilia with the Ashe. You can play a few reroll comps, not an infinite amount of reroll comps, and they're trying to bring some reroll back. But you can still play Duelist reroll, you can play Alun reroll, you can play the Cinder comp that obviously exists. You can play Fast 9. You can stabilize hard on level 8. There's even one cost. You can play Kog'Maw reroll. There's even one cost reroll that exists. You can play Gnar reroll still. And so this last patch I thought was a really, really fantastic patch. It was a fun patch to play, and I think there was just so many available lines. Like, I was really, really happy with last patch, and last patch was a result of a B patch. And so if that's how every TFT patch has to look in the future, we get a patch the day, on Wednesday, and then on Thursday we receive a B patch that fixes any last minute issues with the patch, where some comp evolves during the course of the patch and it isn't caught in that basically like 6-day window prior to the 8 days. I think that's perfectly fine, and that's one part of what I want to say here. I think that's perfectly fine, and people kind of need to get off of Mort's back, or any of the Riot employees' backs, saying, oh, BPatch, the balance has been so bad. I think the balance wasn't perfect early on in the set, but we basically had a fantastic, a pretty good patch where there were a billion reroll comps that were viable, which I thought was fun. And then we had a patch after that where we've had these like little pockets where like a comp is really, really broken for a second, and then they BPatch nerf it, and then it's basically fine after that. I think the balance on this set has honestly been quite good compared to, most sets. I've had people have said in threads and things like that, oh, the balance for set 10 was so much better. But I feel like there's so much more variety that exists in this current set. In set 11, I really think they've done a pretty good job balancing it after the patch comes out, which is the weird thing. That's the thing that confuses people, is that you look at the patch notes and you see the patch where Gnar was broken for a day. You look at the patch notes and say, how are they making these changes to Gnar? How is this possible? But then they fix it the next day, and then it's basically completely fine. They try to nerf Yone, and Yone's still broken for a day. But then the B patch comes out, and then they nerf Yone, and then he's perfectly fine. So I would start with saying I think the balance for this set has been completely fine, if not a little bit above average, because we've had last patch, which I think was fantastic. I think this next patch, after they do whatever changes they need to do, will probably be fantastic. I trust Riot to make good patches, because so far I think this set has been very good balance wise. But that's not the only part of this. Okay, so there's the patch and cadence part of this, which I've said I don't really have an issue with. But there's another big part of this that sort of like leads into a much bigger issue, and is something that I would say, I'm happy with the patch cadence, but this next topic I'm actually not happy with. And that is how this leads into the competitive circuit. Because we had this happen, this exact same situation happened before the last Tacticians Trials, which is the next one is happening this weekend. I'm going to be playing in that. K3 Soju's going to be playing in it. So yeah, a lot of great players are going to be playing in this next Tacticians Trials. But this is the premier North American tournament, where this is what leads into the big cup. If you do well in this, then you can play in the cup and play with all of the best players, and this is how people get to regionals. This is how people get to worlds in the Americas, actually, not just North America. And the hard part last time, and the hard part this time, is these are played on a Friday, starting on a Friday, and patches come out on a Wednesday. So already you have Wednesday and Thursday to prep, and Friday morning maybe, but you basically have 2 days to prep on the patch. And now if we have a B patch, that 2 days goes down to 1 day, and we have 1 day to prep on this new patch for a tournament that matters for, you know, a lot of people. Some people, you know, like Soju, who want to make it to regionals, need to do well in this tournament to actually, you know, make it to regionals. And then there are other, you know, casual TFT players who, you know, just play in these for fun, and they want to have the ability to prepare for them and, you know, have a good time. People who have jobs, you know, who play TFT as like their serious hobby, want to be able to play in these tourneys and have a fun time. And it isn't the best experience playing in a tourney basically the day after a patch comes out, basically having no preparation on it. People have said, you know, it's balanced. I mean, everybody has the same amount of no preparation, but I personally don't really like playing tournaments right after a patch comes out. I like to have some time to actually experience the patch. And that issue, I think, sort of ties into the other issues that exist with this entire tournament format. Yeah, I got you guys. This video isn't actually about the patch. It's really about the tournament format, but now you got to keep watching because, I mean, I've already hooked you in. The tournament format, I would say, for set 11, they did this huge rework where basically, you know, before we had all these separate regions, now we just have 4 big pan regions, you know, and so, you know, like America's entire region, Europe, you know, used to already be a region, but now we have, at least in my, you know, experience, we have the Americas, and we're all one region. And in hindsight, I can't say that this has been a good change for TFT, and I'm wondering if there's some way we can come to a solution that will fix this issue. The biggest issue with this sort of pan-regional model is that now we're running these tourneys that are 500-person tourneys. And so these tourneys are very hard to run quickly because, you know, if one person DCs when we get into game, that means after that round is over, then everybody has to wait for that one group to end. So there's just a huge chance that the tourney is going to run slower than, you know, before when we were running tourneys with like, I don't know, 256 or maybe like 128 players. I think it was 256 maybe. I don't think it even was that high, but I think it was under 200. In any case, it's really hard to run those kind of tourneys. And the other big issue is that because we are running such huge tourneys, there's some players that just can't participate in the tourney format, which feels really, really bad. You know, Joe Bookbark, who, if you guys used to, you know, you remember him as like the guy who, you know, brought Caitlyn into the meta back in set, what was that, set 9 Legends, and, you know, he was the one who taught me Caitlyn, and, you know, the student overcame the master in some way because I popped off in a tourney, like basically stealing his tech. But obviously, you know, he was the progenitor of Caitlyn tech. That guy can't play in any tournaments this set. Why? Because he's got a job, and he doesn't get off early enough on Friday to be able to play in the tournaments. And so he knows that he can't possibly play in any of the Tactician's trials. So he isn't playing for tournaments. He's playing ladder for fun. But it feels really, really bad that a lot of people with just regular traditional jobs can't play in these tournaments. I'm lucky in that I work from home and that my job is super, super chill. So, you know, if I'm like, I'm going to leave at like 3 today, I got all my work done, boss, I'm out of here. I mean, I don't tell him that, but like he's basically fine with that. And that's really nice, but that's not a luxury that a lot of people have. The Tactician's Cups, if you make it to the second weekend, they play on a Saturday, Sunday, and then a Monday. So forget asking for, you know, Friday off. Friday, it's the end of the week, who cares? You also have to ask for a Monday off, potentially, if you make it through the cup. I mean, it's just wild. And I don't really know how Riot made these changes and thought that this was going to make sense. Also, oh my god, I didn't realize, I knew this was a Kane game, but I didn't realize how quickly Kane games end. So I'm just gonna jump to the next VOD in the series. Okay, and we'll just go through some of this one. I didn't realize Kane game would be over giving me 14 minutes to talk because I got some more stuff to say. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how Riot made these changes to our competitive format and thought, yeah, we'll play some tourneys on a Friday, some on a Monday, and like most people probably can play on those days. I don't understand how that's possible, especially a game like TFT where we have very few pros in TFT. I could probably, you know, count on my 2 hands the number of people who are like full-time pros in TFT, and I could count on 0 hands the number of people who are full-time TFT just off playing tournaments, right? Because there is not a single person who plays full-time TFT because they just make enough from playing TFT. It's all people who are tournament players, but also who, are streamers. And even some of our best players, Malala, who won everything last set, has a job. As far as I know, people like Wajan Iverson, one of the best players in North America, is still in school right now. How? I'm just gonna say, how is it possible that Riot made this change? Hello, buddy. I hold one York only. Oh wow, Setsuko's such a nice guy. But yeah, how is it possible that Riot made this change without really thinking about that aspect of it? And I would say that's certainly a big part of it. That they've made this change and now it's impossible for some people to compete. It's really, really rough for a lot of people who want to compete. It's also just a slog, right? Instead of competing, if you make it in from the open, from the trials into the main cup, it used to be 4 days. It used to be a Saturday, Sunday, and then another Saturday, Sunday the next weekend. Now you have to play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the next week you have to play Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's now 6 days, so you've basically almost doubled the amount of time that people have to play. 1.5x is the okay. Whatever. You've drastically increased the number of games that people have to play to make it to the end of these cups, which is just stressful, right? I played all 3 days of the trials, and once I got... Okay, actually, I didn't play all 3 days of the trials. That's like a fake news, but I played all 3 days of another tournament. Look, I'll be playing all 3 days of the trials next time. I played all 3 days of the another tournament, and by the end of that tournament, I was exhausted. I was like, man, I woke up on Friday, played a bunch of TFT. I woke up on Saturday, played a bunch of TFT. I woke up on Sunday, played a bunch of TFT, and then I was out Sunday. But, imagine if you have to do that and do that again the next weekend. It's just a lot to be a competitive player. That also to say that, we talked about this sort of at the beginning of the set, but the way that slots are allocated for worlds as part of the regions, and we probably won't really see outcry about this until we actually get to worlds, but the way that slots are allocated for worlds is also really, really strange. The fact that North America has done so well, there's a ton of promising Southeast Asian players that should get their spot if you're talking just about player count, and if you're just talking about prestige of how well regions have done. North America has done incredibly well as a region, and yet for some reason Europe got extra slots, even though Europe doesn't have that many players, and they're not the worst region, but they're not a very strong region competitively. That also just doesn't really make any sense. And so I can only look back at this change that they made this set and wonder why they did this. And the only answer I can kind of see is for simplicity's sake, which, fair enough. But the system we had before was great, man. Qualifying for the cups felt good. Playing in the first weekend, I can speak for my experience of playing in the first weekend for whatever it was, Shurima Cup. I played in the first weekend, made it through, and it felt really, really rewarding to make it to the second weekend. And then I played in the second weekend, and it felt really, really rewarding, but I didn't feel too overloaded. The tournaments were run really, really smoothly because, there weren't that many players that had to play in them. It just worked. It worked really well, and I'm left here after, we have this issue that isn't even really related to tournaments with patch cadence, but then that also messes with the tournaments. I'm left here after all of that saying, why did we even make this change in the first place? I feel like it doesn't benefit TFT as a whole really at all. I think we would have done much better on the old system. And, obviously this is a change that's, Riot Esports, who answers for that? I don't even know, because Mortog doesn't really talk about that stuff too much. And so we don't really have that kind of community-facing member that, we do have in Mortog. With that kind of stuff, but still, I mean, it's a question that I think should be answered, which is why was this change made in the first place? And I've heard, I recall I was watching Frodan's stream, and what? That's really strange. I was watching Frodan's stream, and he was talking about how the first cup. The first Tactician's Trials was run kind of poorly, it had delays, and there were some people... I didn't even talk about this, but because we have 512 players, I think it is, we have 2 groups of players starting. One of them starts at 7 p.m. Eastern or something like that, or 8 p.m. Eastern time or something like that, which meant that the people who started in the second group, if you were Eastern time, some of them had to play until 2 or 3 a.m. for their games. I didn't even talk about that, but that's another huge issue with this setup, where some people on certain time zones have to play until like 3 a.m. and then other people, you know, wake up and they play at like 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. or something like that, because, you know, they have two groups because it's so many people. It's kind of a disaster. And so I was watching Frodan stream, and he said he actually reached out to Riot about this because you know, he's Frodan and he wants, you know, TFT to succeed, and they basically said, you know, we're working on it, but they're probably not going to be able to do anything this set because, I mean, this set's already in motion. So I'm curious to see what changes they bring about in the competitive scene next set, because I don't think things can work as they are now. Maybe we'll see some kind of, you know, really genius change happen, but I don't really understand why we came to this change, and I think something must change from there. But yeah, that was, you know, a lot of stuff, a lot of thoughts. You guys aren't going to get to see the end of the Setsuko game. I'm pretty sure he doesn't go like first. I'll jump ahead a little bit so you guys can see where he ends up placing this game if you really have a burning itch to know how he does in this Shen game. Yeah, he might have actually... I mean, it took him really long to hit that Shen. Okay, looks like he was just like randomly fourth or something. But yeah, like these were... Yeah, these are basically my thoughts in kind of a stream of consciousness way. I'd love to hear what you guys think about all this kind of stuff, because it is... I mean, it's important for TFT and the future of it, and I want TFT to have a bright future, and I think some of these things are really hampering TFT. Obviously, with the patch gains, you could say, you know, put TFT on its own, put TFT in its own client. You know, that's what a lot of people have said, but I'm not someone who really wants to talk about, you know, in an ideal world, what all of these changes would look like. I think we need to exist in the real world, and Riot has said time after time that is not something that's going to happen in the near future. So probably that's not a solution. I mean, we can talk about it for sure, and, you know, let me know what you guys think in the comments. All right, I'm not going to make the video too long. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you tomorrow for the new patch, and then the day after that for the real new patch. All right, see you later.